Hello, good morning. All right, we're just going to continue our countdown with 5. I like to call this one all or none. And I use the scientific method on this. So I started off with an observation or question. What is the purpose of education? Then I researched the topic, and what I focused on was the NAEP, the framework for standards. My hypothesis is that, I mean, clearly there's some conditioning going on, whether or not that's good for you or not. We'll discuss that at another time, but my hypothesis is it's a labor force. My experiments, I've spent a lot of time watching the NAEP videos from October of 2022 to this June 2023. And I'm going to keep my eyes on this because this school year, this is the first week of school. So we're going to, I think, start seeing some more changes as far as that's concerned. I found conflicting results between the NAEP, what they want, and then students. And then here's my conclusion. So this is 5. Okay, and then we'll take that one down. And then for 4, we'll have a reminder that this is kind of a game. And so for the 4 square game, the problem that I found was the National Association for Educational Progress. What they want, again, for education differs from the priority of students. So in this 4 square game, let's see if I can pull this one up. So just a simple question, for example, asking the NAP, what are some solutions? Now remember, they want quantity. And from the NCES webpage, their quote was to improve the education system in our country. So what they want for solutions to help with education is the use of the remarkable Hindu-Arabic decimal place value system, productivity and property. They say it's not a one-size-fits-all top-down approach. They're talking about expanding summer school into school days for work, really ultimately proposing a 12-month school year eventually. They want aggressive professional development in the form of interventions for engagement. Now, as I've been traveling around talking to students, what the students want from education is to learn. And they would prefer quality over quantity. And the list of demands from students to help with education is listen to us. They want to feel safe, to learn relevant things, go figure, time to figure out who they are, to live. And then the last one kind of got to me, but the last one was don't kill us. So I think these are 2 very different approaches to how we're going to get into this 2023 school year. Historical interpretations. Now, again, my hypothesis for this rule of 4, this game that they call it, is it's up to math, which is occupying your time, I think, and then language, which is occupying your space, your mind, what we talk about. So historical interpretations, I thought this was kind of interesting, and I'd like to go into more of this. Pythagoras, these math giants that we kind of learn, I found just interesting that what they were as philosophers is a little different in interpretation. For example, we have data for all of these testings, right? And math is heavily tested. But what do we know about these people? Pythagoras, no authentic writings of Pythagoras are known. And Euclid, father of geometry, very little is known and often is misinterpreted. This guy who has algebra, I found this one really interesting. The the whole idea of algebra was the science of restoring and balancing. It meant balancing broken bones. And so, again, I just find that the interpretation is different than what we're learning. And Descartes, he came up with the I think, therefore I am. But in 1619, his biggest thing was to be skeptical of the kind of math and the learning that we have. And then we'll get into maybe the English. And I think my point of this is, again, what we're learning historically from these philosophers is not what's being taught in our language at our school. And so what are we learning about when we learn about things like fiction, nonfiction, poetry, exposition? Those are tested and interpreted from this game that we're kind of being playing. Okay, and for 3, if you recall, we talked about triangles, magic number. So do you want more or less? So in terms of triangles, like I said, I kind of feel like the algorithms that are being used, there's a lot of money on this end of it. I don't know, for example, where the paychecks of they are coming from. I think that's a good skeptical question to ask. But at any rate, I do believe that as far as like trigonometry is concerned, the numbers are going to be in the favor of this direction for progress. Yes? And I think what has happened is with COVID, like I said, I think students slowed down that progress, which created kind of a frenzy to say we need to get students back to in the classroom with the teachers and make sure that their time is really being occupied. So 2, let's just see if we can do all these now. 2, if you remember, was either or. This is why I do this. So either or. And as I'm counting down from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2, what I picked for either or is what we have is essentially what's creating cognitive dissonance, which is we have, it's a psychological term, I'm sure you've heard of it. Well, it was in the Barbie movie. Wouldn't that be fun to talk about? Anyway, so cognitive dissonance is when you have maybe a part of you that's doing these things that are going against what's in your nature, like getting enough sleep, things like that. So it creates a discomfort because maybe your values are not aligned with the values of this testing that is being put to place. Okay, so that's either or. I consider that cognitive dissonance. And then ideally, what we want is, remember, for one, I asked the question, which is what's the purpose of education? So the purpose of iSchool as I continue is what is going to be the purpose of education for you? And I like the term justified true beliefs, which is, in other words, I'm presenting a lot of facts, maybe, whether or not you believe it or not. Well, I guess it's kind of important because you have to believe what I'm saying in order for us to kind of progress to helping you, the students, out, which is what I feel like my job is to do right now. So you either believe it and find truths in it, and it's this justified true belief, which is kind of the spot where we want to be. Now, there's a lot of poorly justified beliefs out there. In other words, that rhetoric, talking circles around what the purpose of education, you have to do these testing because it's the best for you, even though you're negatively being affected by it. And the progress is being positively moved and affected, I think, financially. Yes? So it came down to one question. Now what I consider, I have another diagram behind me. Yeah, we'll pull this down. I just call it like my own vector theories, because this is kind of how I see it, whether it was you could use this same system going back to the Middle Ages, which is you have so many people and industries that want a piece of you, the student. You have anything from social media to testing required by law, what you wear, dress codes, what you're reading. And again, you can use this playbook going back to the Middle Ages where you had maybe the church and politics, the kings and queens, the monarchy ruling, and they kind of had these vectors around the masses. Is this making sense? That's just how I see you. Everybody just seems to want a piece of you. Do this, don't do that. Eat this, don't do that. And I just feel like students are essentially like being imperialized, right? And 0, I think, is the perfect number for us because it's going to be our starting point for high school. Now I'm going to do an orientation next, and hopefully all of this is going to come together. But ultimately, I like the idea of 0 because it gives us this place of a beginning. Even though you still are going to be in the school system, we can kind of start the process of you building up some kind of foundational base so that you can survive at least this school year with a little different direction. And that's what I'm going to be here for. I love this. Okay. Ciao.